Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Become an After-School Meals Guru. Build a successful after-school meals program through the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP. This webinar is sponsored by General Mills Food Service. Our mission is to ensure every child is well fed and ready to learn. We exist to help operators transform the school food experience to drive participation. My name is Ileme Amegache. I am an associate manager within the Bell Institute of Health and Nutrition, where I lead health and nutrition efforts for food service, including K-12. If you're not familiar with the Bell Institute, we are a dedicated group within General Mills whose mission is to be the source of scientific and nutrition expertise that creates value and growth for General Mills. Now, before we begin today's program, I would like to cover a few housekeeping matters. So first, this webinar is being recorded. The recorded webinar, along with the presentation slides, will be available within a few weeks on the General Mills cf.com website. At the end of today's webinar, we will have a Q&A period. However, you may submit questions at any time during the webinar using the chat feature located on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. After the webinar concludes, you will be asked to fill out a short survey and will receive an email with links to the slides and continuing education credit certificates within a few weeks. Today, you will hear success stories and learn strategies and best practices for building your after-school meal programs from our panelists, as well as menu pairing and recipe ideas. But before we continue, let's take a minute to hear from you. So if you'll be kind to send some responses to this poll question, do you currently have an after-school meals program through CACFP? And so please take a minute to input your answers. Okay, I can see some answers coming through. Okay. So most of you have a snack program, and about the same number do not have a CACFP program. So hopefully today you will be learning strategies and best practices to help you build your program. Thank you for your engagement. All right, so I'm pleased to share a snapshot of our speaker panel today. I will introduce each speaker before they speak. And with that, I am very excited to introduce our first speaker for today, Carolyn Wait. Carolyn is a senior program manager for Share Friends' No Kid Hungry campaign. In this role, she develops resources and provides training to schools and nonprofits in order to improve and expand access to CACFP, especially after-school meals. Prior to joining Share Our Strength in 2015, Carolyn was a CACFP specialist for the District of Columbia State Agency. Carolyn is a registered dietitian, and she holds a bachelor's in nutrition from Ohio State University and a master's in public health from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Carolyn?
Yes, hello, thank you, Ileme, and it's an honor to be on this webinar with so many gurus who have great on-the-ground experience operating after-school meals programs. I'm here today just to provide some background info so that we're all on the same page. It looks like some of you have experience with CACFP and after-school meals programs and others do not. But even for the rest of you, I'll go over some information about why you should offer after-school meals, which can be helpful if you're trying to expand the program to new people. I will also cover some basic requirements and then also some ideas about how you can work within those requirements to build a successful program. So first off, on the benefits. So for students, there are obvious benefits. For those who don't have a healthy dinner waiting at home, they get the nutritious food that they need. For kids who are in after-school activities or after care, they get food to make it through a long afternoon until they can get home. And for all students, it can be great for improved focus and performance in their after-school activities. For parents, it can be really helpful so that they don't have to worry that their kids are going hungry or eating unhealthy snacks, especially if they work late or they're working multiple jobs and are relying on their kids being in those after-school activities and aftercare. For after-school programs, we've heard anecdotally that they see increased attendance when they offer after-school meals. They see improved behavior and less fighting. And then on a more practical level, they can also put any money that they were spending on food towards programming and staff and other things to improve their program. And for schools and school nutrition departments, if they're operating the program directly, they get the benefit of the reimbursement rate, which is $3.41 plus the value of USDA foods. And that can do a lot for the program, more staff hours, possibly being able to upgrade equipment. And if schools don't operate the program directly and they work with another sponsor, then they could get the money from vending meals, or they just get the benefit of having meals at no charge. So lots of benefits across the board for offering this program. So to go over some basic requirements. So meals can be offered on school days, obviously, but they can also be offered on weekends, holidays, or breaks during the school year. So there are lots of options if you have Saturday tutoring programs or other things, or you run a camp during spring break. You can operate this program, which is an advantage to CACFP after-school meals as compared to NSLP snacks, which can only be served on school days. Now, on school days, the meals do have to be served after the final bell, with limited exceptions. So you could be considered an extended day school, but beyond that, the meal has to be served after the final bell. And on weekends or holidays and breaks, you can serve it any time. And obviously, the meal has to be served during program hours. So if you have after-school programming that runs from 3 to 6 p.m., you can't serve the meal at 8 p.m., but if you do have programming going on late into the evening, or again on Saturdays or other times, then you can offer the meal. So this opens up a lot of flexibility for your program and for your kids to be able to structure a program in a way that works for them. And so working within those basic requirements, you can really figure out a way to structure the program that maximizes participation and reaches all the kids who really need it. So No Kid Hungry pilot tested some different models, and the first one we tested we called the umbrella model. And so that works on the basis of as long as they're open to all activities or a drop-in program, then you can serve all students in a school. So there's no requirement to track that a student actually participates in an after-school activity as long as an activity is offered to them. And so again, as long as there are activities offered, you can openly promote the meal to all students and have everyone participate. And this is a way to expand your program to include student athletes. So ordinarily, competitive sports teams and interscholastic sports do not count as an eligible enrichment activity. But if there are other programs like tutoring and homework help, then you can offer meals to everyone, including student athletes. And then the other model that we tested is called Supper in the Classroom, and that's pretty self-explanatory based on the name. So you deliver meals to the classroom, or in some cases we've seen where teachers will bring all their students to the cafeteria, pick up their meals, and come back and eat in the classroom all together. It's typically done as soon as the bell rings, or it can work well for those extended day schools that meet the qualifications to serve before the bell. And teachers can do an activity in the class with the kids, and kids eat their supper before they have to go. And we tested that in elementary school since fewer kids are staying for after-school activities in elementary school, or they have less flexibility on staying, even if they don't have activities. And so we found great success with both of these. So with the umbrella model, when schools implemented it, they had a 53% increase in participation. You know, we were really surprised when we were testing that model. It seemed like after-school meals were a secret, and they were only being served to particular kids in particular programs. But then once they realized that they could be offering the meals to everyone because they had a variety of programs and they were openly promoting the program, they saw a big increase in participation. And then with supper in the classroom, we really saw phenomenal results. Schools were serving as many suppers as they were serving lunches. Because again, kids are there with their classmates and their teacher, and everyone's eating together, and so it's really a great environment. So once you can kind of overcome any logistical hurdles to delivering all of the meals, then it can work really, really well. Now, whether you fully implement these models or not, you really do have to consider things like timing and logistics, transportation, promotion, packaging and branding, and partnerships to really make them work as effectively as possible. So with timing and logistics, it's all about figuring out where are the kids and how can you get meals to as many of them as possible. So you can serve the meal as soon as the bell rings, and that's typically what we recommend, to serve as many kids as possible before they all scatter off to their activities. But again, you can serve that meal whatever works best for you and the kids that you serve. With transportation, that can usually be a big barrier if the buses leave as soon as the bell rings, so you can work with the school transportation department, maybe figure out later activity buses, or maybe have the bus pick up kids at another school first that isn't eligible to offer after-school meals. Promotion obviously is a big thing, especially with the umbrella model, where it really works when you're promoting the meal to all students. Things as simple as PA announcements can really help. With packaging and branding, it's all about, are you serving meals that kids want to eat? And are you making the meals work for you? You know, if you can only serve cold meals, you know, are you branding that so kids aren't going in expecting a hot meal? Are they packaged well? Things like that. Can kids take them to their activity if they need to or want to be able to? And then lastly, partnerships. This is a program that really relies on partnerships. Again, whether you're a school working with a nonprofit sponsor or you're just trying to work with all of the after-school programming providers and coaches, working with after-school programs in the community and not just those based at the school, it's really a program that runs on partnerships. So that is a little bit about how the program works. There is a lot more backgrounds that I could go into. So if you are one of those people on the line today that does not have experience, you are welcome to visit our website. We have a lot of background materials and other basic information about how the program works. But I do want to make sure that you get to hear from all these other great people on the line, and I'll be available to answer questions afterward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. So next, we are going to hear from Susan Milazzo. She's the Director of Dining Service at Menasha Joint School District. Susan has managed school food service programs in both private and public school districts for the past 22 years in a self-operated and contracted food service setting. She's a member of the School Nutrition Association of Wisconsin and has served on the association's state executive board as secretary-treasurer and on the member services committee as well. She received a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Wisconsin South School of Home Economics and Hotel and Restaurant Management. Susan, over to you.
Good morning, and thanks to everyone for being here. I am going to tell you a little bit about what we have going on in Wisconsin, very chilly Wisconsin, on the shores of frozen Lake Winnebago. So this morning, as you sit here listening to the webinar, I would like to tell you what we started pursuing several years ago in Little Menasha. Just a little background, we have about 3,500 students. We have 4 elementary supper sites, 2 secondary supper sites, and overall the district is hovering anywhere between 50 and 54% free and reduced. Just to kind of give you a little bit of framework there. We have 2 elementary schools that do not have supper sites. They do not offer the programming, but those that we are required to have to participate in CACFP. So those buildings kind of envelope or kind of get into the other 2 that are close by, and we do transport between the 2 different sites. So as we started to look at the opportunity for after-school meals, we looked at what was going on currently, and we have a very thriving after-school program in our district that is managed by the district. So we had kids that were in our buildings after school, and we were offering the reimbursable snack program. And we were doing that for many years. And as we were looking at it, we really decided that it wasn't sufficient any longer. It was just not addressing the hunger needs of our students. So we rolled out at our secondary schools a full-on supper program at the Bell with multiple offerings, hot and cold, and really enjoyed success there, serving anywhere between 150 to 180 meals at our high school, and anywhere from 50 to 100 meals depending on the sporting season at our middle school. So we needed to assess the needs and also be very honest with ourselves about what our kids were experiencing after school. And when I think back to what Carolyn was talking about, all of the things that she spoke about, we literally addressed as we were developing our program strategies for how we were going to implement this, where we were going to be doing it, what our kids were doing at the time, and who we were going to partner with, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So how many kids did we have in our buildings afterwards? I want you to ask yourself that. How many, where are they, and who are those children with during those after-school times? And are you serving a snack, and is it truly enough to meet the needs of the kids in your community? So our approach, our solution was to determine who our champions were, who our partners are, and who our resistors could be. And if you're out there and you're listening to this, you could be a resistor. And it's okay to be a resistor at this point. But you're here and you're listening, so that means that you have a high interest, or someone in your arena of business has a very high interest in pursuing after-school meals, and that's a good thing. So you could actually be both, and it's important to recognize that. It's important to recognize that people in your food service department, your school staff and your teachers, any of your after-school programming that currently exists, your coaches, parents, all of those other things that are going on in your buildings, because they're multi-use buildings, you could have someone who is really a champion or a partner and wants to help you succeed. You could also have some very vocal resistors. And we will kind of talk about how to win them over and create partners where you didn't think you had some. So we were looking at what CACFP had to offer. We knew that the after-school meal was thriving in our secondary schools, and we wanted to bring that to our elementary schools to enhance that after-school food opportunity for our kids. So we went the route of creating a super snack, and you'll hear about this a little bit later too in other districts across the country. And that was really the answer for us. It gave us an opportunity to really beef up the meal and provided additional reimbursements to help us do that, and it was well received. So in doing that, we created a meal team, which you truly have to, you're not going to have to look very far for people who want to help you with this. You may have partners you're not aware of, and you need to share the knowledge and the responsibility of this meal service. And you also need to assume that it's going to work. We tend to build a case for ourselves that this isn't for us. This isn't for me. I really don't want this. I'm crossing my arms right now. This is another meal service. I wanted to be done after lunch was done. I wanted to be all my staff off the clock by a certain time. Instead, build a case for that support and then ask for it. And then go ahead and take some action and tweak it as you go. So in creating this meal team, we went to the folks that were spending time with their kids after school and said, you've told us that the snack is no longer sufficient. It's not enough for the kids. They're asking for more. And we are prepared to offer more, but we need your help with that. So what we did is we partnered with them. We prepare the snack. We create the food production orders. We put it in a place that they are familiar with. They've been trained. And then we tag team with them. And the after-school program folks serve the snack, account for the snack, fill in the leftovers on the food production orders, return that to the food service department, and we pick it up and we continue to tag team throughout the week. The way we build our menu is built off of our lunch menu so that we are using familiar products. We're using things that we already know that are well accepted by the students. And the results were absolutely overwhelming. positive response from the after-school team, positive response from the students, positive response from the parents. And currently we are pulling a lot more walkers, bikers, and families into the buildings every day. That transportation bugaboo, that is a bugaboo. You know, it is something that the buses are leaving with or without the children on them at times. And some of the kids that we are hoping to reach are on those buses. So that is still something that we're working on, and the district is very open to making as much of an accommodation as they can. And you know what, folks? You don't know until you ask. You don't know until you show them, actually. Invite them to your meal program after school. Have them watch the students eat. Have them talk to the students about how important that meal is to them after school. It's best to show by example, and when you have things up and running, bring your administrators, superintendents, school board members into your building so they can see the students enjoying that. The building principals are inquiring now in our district as to how we get more families to take advantage of this program, how we get them into, even if their students aren't enrolled in those after-school programming opportunities, just like Carolyn said, that umbrella falls over everyone. We really want to reach more students. We know that we need to reach more students. I want to tell you something, show you something as you're visualizing this, because you're seeing a lot of text on slides, that your dinner program, supper program, super snack program is probably not going to look like the picture to the left. It's probably not going to be as displayed as that. If it is, you know what, rock on. That's awesome. And you're doing amazing things all over the place, I'm sure. It's most likely going to look like the right side of the slide. It's going to look like things that are fast, things that are recognizable by the students, and things that are easily served. You know, maintaining that integrity in your program for the CACFP guidelines is super important. So when you're looking at the framework of what your super snack or meal program looks like, look at who your consumers are, as you do with every other meal program that you run in your district, and make sure that it's going to be appealing. One thing that we have unbelievably going for us after school is that every student that you see coming out of the classrooms is most likely ravenous. And there's a lot of things that appeal to them in the afternoon. And we've been able to try some of those really cool things on the students in the afternoon. They're hungry. And they like the foods they're familiar with, but they're also willing to try different things at that time as well. And we've used that to help us explore what's acceptable to our students. Do not be afraid. Keep going and keep pushing for what you know is right for your community. And I am going to, here's my contact information. You're welcome to call and contact me, and I'm going to hand it off.
Well, thank you, Susan. So coming up next is Betty Crocker. She's the Director of Child Nutrition Services at Redlands Unified School District in California, where she's responsible for feeding 22,000 students. Betty was recently named one of 5 national winners of the 2018 No Kid Hungry Summer Meals Hero Contest for her efforts to launch and grow a summer meal program in her community. Betty received an associate degree at Le Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts and is a graduate of the Loma Linda University School of Public Health. Welcome, Betty.
Well, Elamay, thank you so much for that very generous introduction. I see that I'm the only one here representing the West Coast in sunny Southern California. We are hovering at a very low temperature of like 70 degrees today, so we hope that the storm doesn't get in the way of this presentation. But all kidding aside, what a privilege it is to sit with such champions in my mind. Miss Carolyn teed us up so nicely, and Susan from Wisconsin and I are doing a lot of similar things, and I can't wait to hear from Donna in Georgia. The very first thing I wanted to share with everybody is what I call our footprint or our profile. I think it's important to understand this is essentially a 3-year journey that I'm sharing with you, and I've shared this with many different audiences, and I've just tailored it for our needs today. But essentially, I am a brand new director that inherited the privilege of serving 22,000 children in an environment of our free and reduced. This year is 62%. I have 24 cafes. The range of those cafes range from 31 to 92% free and reduced. So you can imagine the disparity is quite significant. And then we have an added challenge in our school district. We actually span 5 cities. So what I inherited was 6 hot services of CACFP, and then we had the 4 NSLP snack services. We had an incredibly disconnected, what we call OST providers, that's out of school time providers. And our OST providers were largely unknown to many of us. They were spread all throughout our district. And then we had a central kitchen crew that was working part-time, which will come into play as we move along. And what I've done throughout this slide is I put in a lot of pictures of what our program looks like. So there's our first picture right there. So I'm all about strategy, and strategy requires branding. My kiddos in California, when you share the word supper, they do not know what we're talking about. But when we branded what we called Super Snack, which I borrowed from our local hero, Rodney Taylor, former director out of Riverside Unified, we went and did the Super Snack. And the Super Snack is a lovely, lovely strategy in managing how to get these programs out to all of the kids in all of the cities. First of all, we centralized our production out of our central kitchen. Hence, we have the lower labor burden because our team is not serving the meals per se. It is a completely cold service. And in my county and in the state of California, when you have a completely cold service, our OST providers, our after-school coordinators, do not need to have a food handler's card. So it's incredibly accessible. The biggest challenge was obviously coordinating this program out of the central kitchen. And going on to my next picture, and by the way, let's not forget, we have 2 pictures right there. That's actually a picture from my central kitchen assembly line right there. So the how. As everybody has been sharing, partnership is everything. So I call this the pie chart, which is very befitting since we're about ready to look at Thanksgiving here. So the biggest piece of the pie chart, as I shared earlier, was the concentrated labor in the central kitchen. 100% of our super snacks are organized and shipped out of our central kitchen. Now, the first thing that I did is coming down underneath that, it says CDE partnership. So that is my state partners, and a special shout out and thank you to Janet. I literally called her and I was like, Chica, oh my goodness, I have YMCA, I have Boys and Girls Club, I have my Think Together, I have principal programs, and they're all over the place. Please help me. And I think that was probably one of the smartest things that we did as a team is that we asked for the partnership first at the state level, because I had teams that were going directly with CDE that no longer wanted to directly go with CDE, and you will find a big champion in your state partnerships. The other thing that we did, of course, is coalesce the OST providers. For the first time ever, all 3 OST providers, YMCA, Think Together, and the Boys and Girls Club all sat here in my office. It was the first time that they ever met each other. Imagine all these champions, the very first time that they get to meet each other, we all gathered over food. How befitting. We added some outliers, which I'll go into in a moment. And this, again, was cold service or completely shelf-stable service, which carries us through the holidays over at the Boys and Girls Club. And then we were committed to daily delivery. So we start our production at 5:30 every morning in the central kitchen. And we deliver same day. So it's same day service. Whatever the kiddos have in front of them is what we made that day in front of the central kitchen. Just briefly on logistics, which is, everything is a big deal. But the biggest deal is getting our logistics. The learning curve is something that you just constantly are managing within your culture. And when your dream is to end hunger on your shift, you are willing to face any challenges, including the learning curve. Super snacks, we made them assembly line style with an overwrap machine, which I did not have money to extend, so we found grants to get that done. I needed to store these in large plastic bins or rolling cambros. Again, the grant that we got initially funded this. And then we transported the super snacks to the site that day. So I'm using the logistics that are already in place. I already have a truck going out to all of these sites. So now I just put the super snacks inside of that truck. And they hold in the site refrigerators or they hold in the rolling cambros. And you know what? I'm so sorry. I forgot to. Let me just go back one. I apologize. Logistics. So then the next one is our outlier programs. Our speakers shared with you partnership, partnership, partnership. What I would like to add to that contribution is where I look for partnerships is directly with my VIPs. I call them very important principals. So these are principal-driven programs. I met with each principal one-on-one to share with them what we have and what we can partner with them. And what ended up coming from all of that is, for example, we had a Saturday school grant that my principal at Crafton Elementary needed nutrition support in order to get that program done. We were happy to partner with her on that. We have special enrichment programs, Franklin Elementary. We actually end up doing a barbecue, and we end up serving about 500 after school, and it's a special enrichment event. And then I have the community events. Our biggest community partner is AK Smiley Library and the City of Redlands. We just finished a fantastic press conference with them and ended up on the front page. I think that's like our 4th time on the front page with our after-school meals program. And so this kind of gives you a great overview of the web of partnerships. I would challenge you to look and see where your communication is within your district and within your community. This is just how it ended up working for us here in Redlands. So here is another beautiful partnership portfolio. And I just divided this into 4 areas for your consideration, just again, just to inspire maybe some partnerships that you already know or maybe some that you'd want to grow within the community, the after school, of course, the enrichment organizations, and then we can't forget our local policymakers and cities. As a director, I think all of us have a pretty healthy regard that we need to also look at what the revenue is on these programs. Essentially, the USDA will invest an additional $2.60 approximately per meal if you will just step from the snack to what we call the super snacks. In other words, if you're stepping from the CACFP snack to the CACFP supper, that's an additional $2.60 investment. Who wins on that? The answer is everybody wins, including our kiddos. This is a 3-year journey of, we just completed our first 2 years of the Super Snack program, and our meal count annually was up about 164% or over 76,000 meals. And what that equated to in revenue is about $429,000, or we were up, again, 262% on our revenue. And I touched on this earlier, but the student impact, my goodness, the why. This impact is significant. We have single-handedly changed the culture and expectations of the community that we will take care of your kiddos after school, and they will get a fantastic nutrition super snack every school day in all of our OST programs and all the principal outlier programs. The after-school meals program definitely fills the gap for families. Students who do not receive the meal during the day can now have that 3rd meal offered after school. And right now our footprint is all elementaries and middle schools, but we are far from done. Absolutely the best is yet to be. We are looking to be of service to our 3 high schools, which is approximately 7,500 students. So listen, you don't start any new program without the bumpy road. I believe I have shared already, when this dream of ending hunger lives in your heart, you will inspire the leadership throughout your community and throughout your district to travel this bumpy road. Some early lessons learned, the biggest one always is to be flexible. Be flexible enough to support the individual needs of your site. I know that we all like to come up with a cookie cutter and hope that that cookie cutter works at every site, but when you're approachable and when you're flexible, amazing things come of all of this. And I would also encourage everybody, of course, to adapt to the culture of your district. In ours, I shared already, the principals are the key. Identify your key players. When I was brand new here in the city of Redlands, the very first place that I visited was City Hall and also Redlands PD, and they became our biggest champions, and they were by and large responsible for partnering with us to acquire the initial grant money to get us going. And then I would also encourage everybody, just get out of your box. Just get out of your comfort zone and move into a solution mode, not necessarily a solution mode that is weighted on our end as the school district, but on our partnership end. And then follow through always equals strong partnerships. If I have a partner that asks me to do anything, the first thing I say is yes, and then I figure it out. And so here is all my contact information, including my cell phone. Please feel free to reach out to me. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well. I probably should have put that up there. And I do believe, Ilme, I get to turn it over to you. And thank you again.
Well, thank you, Betty. So Donna Cava is up next. And Donna has been the Child Nutrition Director in the Florida County Schools for over 19 years. And since coming to Florida County, they have instituted a summer program that serves close to 100,000 meals each summer. Floyd County Schools contracts meals with CACFP sponsors to provide supper meals to approximately 500 children a day. And when new people meet Donna and they ask her, what do you do? She simply says, I feed people. Let's welcome Donna.
Thank you so much. Good morning from Floyd County, and this morning we're cloudy and 35 degrees, and you would think that we are having an Arctic meltdown here. Most people are used to warm weather this time of year. We are an hour north of Atlanta and an hour south of Chattanooga and on the Alabama-Georgia line. And nobody seems to know what football team to root for here, so that's a big crisis of identity in Rome, Georgia. We first realized that after several years of a successful breakfast, lunch, and snack program, neighboring counties were having great success with summer feeding, and we thought we would see if there was a need for summer feeding in our community. The first year we did 29 days of summer feeding. We essentially took the first month of summer, and the first year we averaged 329 meals per day. The second year we decided to go all summer because the first year seemed to be successful, and we averaged 1,522 meals per day. Growth of that magnitude, which is a 462% increase in meals, is exciting and exhausting, but it demonstrated that we absolutely had a need for meals during the summer, and that hunger was an absolute reality in our community beyond the school day. Different states administrate CACFP differently, and in Georgia, CACFP is administrated right from the start, which is an entirely different segment from the child nutrition program. I had looked into that time beginning to participate in CACFP, but there was a hiring freeze within my school system. It involved a tremendous amount of paperwork, and it just was not something that was viable for me at that time. Around that same time, I was approached by a gentleman from the Arby's Foundation and No Child Hungry. He was a very pleasant guy. He brought a slideshow for me to see about hunger in my community and said, can I present this to you? I said, absolutely. You present me your slideshow and I'll give you my slideshow. and we both interacted about hunger in our community, and he said, would you be interested in doing CACFP supper meals? I said, I absolutely would love to do supper meals, but I cannot go through this process of applying. I cannot hire somebody to do the paperwork because we have a hiring freeze. At that point, he said, if I can find somebody to do the paperwork, would you be interested in being the vendor for the meals? This sounded like a wonderful situation because children would get fed, and that's what I was most interested in, was my children being fed. During the time that he was looking for somebody to do the paperwork, it gave us time to get ready. He asked me if I knew people who would be interested. Coming off the success of summer feeding, I did know people who would be interested because we had just been developing those partnerships. 2 summer feeding groups showed initial interest, and another group, which was Network Day Services, an adult special needs center, showed interest, and those 3 groups began to start the process of getting certified to do supper meals. It took each group between 9 to 18 months to get their applications approved right from the start. During that time, we began to get what we needed to do to be ready to serve them, which was the menu development, to figure out how much labor it was going to take, the equipment needs, and that was the long approval process was actually good for us, so that when the approval took place, we would be able to successfully serve them. With that slow rollout, each site came on individually. It wasn't all of them at one time. The 3 organizations had 5 sites among the 3 organizations. Now we're serving 8 sites, but each site serves with between 60 and 120 meals. Some serve supper and a snack, some just serve supper. Currently, we're doing around 580 meals a day, meals and snacks a day. This is our 6th year providing meals. We do 3 to 4 hot meals per week and 1 cold meal. Friday is generally a sandwich meal. We spread the labor out among 4 schools. That makes it where it's a much more manageable situation. What we discovered is usually it's about 2 hours of labor. Occasionally it's 4 at the more higher production schools. That gives my employees a little bit more labor that they get to have, which is good. This came, all of the additional CACFP sites and the approvals came around the same time that a la carte regulations changed. So it was very beneficial at providing additional revenue at a time that the a la carte revenue sort of stagnated a little bit. It was great PR for our community. It's been a benefit that I really didn't expect. I was more interested in our kids being fed, didn't expect the PR in the community, but it's been a tremendous help. It continues that year-round communication with our partners for our summer feeding, and it's strengthened our summer feeding program. And most of all, our kids get fed. And then there's my contact information. If anyone has any more questions, I'll be happy to talk with you about it.
Well, thank you, Donna. So next up is Vicki Lipscomb, who is the founder and executive director of Child Nutrition Program Incorporated in Charlotte, North Carolina. She founded CNP in 1982, which now sponsors child care centers, homes, and after-school programs, feeding over 16,000 children daily. Vicki also advocates for child care organizations as a member of the Paperwork Reduction Work Group, a group established by Congress and appointed by the USDA. In addition, as a member of the Policy and Regulation Committee for the National CACFP Association, Vicki stays up to date on the latest regulations and changes affecting the food program. Over to you, Vicki.
Thank you. Well, one of the first things I would like to say, my webinars, and I'll have to say next slide because I'm not progressing here on my computer. There you go. One thing I would like to say is that the CACFP supper program actually is one of the programs that can bridge that feeding for an insecure child, a food insecure child. I also don't have any of my notes on these slides, so we're going to wing it here pretty well. But to quote one of our food service folks in our schools, if only this program had been available when I was in school, I may have done better. So feeding children and school performance really is a thing, and that's something that in the education system we all need to be aware of. We're finding that our schools are concerned about the complexity of the CACFP, the differences between the CACFP and the National School Lunch Program. They're concerned about the application process, and we hear that that's a state issue that can be pretty confusing for folks. And they're concerned about how they're going to oversee their sites. In addition, you do have to have that buy-in from your school principals, administrators, possibly your school board, and certainly your cafeteria staff. In our schools that we serve, they serve supper in the classroom after the bell. And we also have a few programs on Saturday where they do school tutoring on the weekends, and so we're able to offer those services also. If you'll move this slide to the next slide, please. Depending on your circumstances and your personnel, you may be able to navigate this process easily, but if that is what is keeping you from participating in the program, you think, for instance, having a hiring freeze or you don't have the additional staff, a sponsoring organization can potentially help you. What we do here is we navigate the application process for our folks. We do all of the on-site education for the staff and the cafeteria staff to be sure they understand the regulations. We oversee the reviews. Sometimes with some of our schools that are pretty large, we send 4 or 5 people out to do the reviews so that we can actually see a whole meal. And we offer support to the principals, the teachers, anyone involved in the process. We do the administration and the schools do the operational piece. So they are not having to do a lot of paperwork other than what's in the classroom. If you'll move to the next slide, please. As you've heard earlier, there has to be an after-school enrichment activity and there has to be supervision. So in the classroom, that's a pretty easy thing to do. It's after the bell, but before dismissal. This is a quiet time that these meals are served, and frequently we're finding that as far as an activity, homework help, story time, anything that promotes a quiet environment while the children are eating generally is easier to provide. If you'll move to the next slide, please. The paperwork that needs to be kept on site and then submitted to us is an attendance record and a time of service count of how many children have eaten. This is the only paperwork we have to have. This gets sent into our office and we review it to be sure that everything adds up. You certainly can't, if a child comes in, say a sibling comes in to pick up with a parent, that child can be fed also and needs to be added to the attendance record. But it is important to remember that the attendance and the count are not the same. They are 2 separate processes that have to happen. If a child takes home their meal, they pick up their meal and they head out the door, that is not something that can be claimed. However, you can offer a share table. And Let's move to the next slide. With the share table, children can take home some food or they can put it on the share table, and they have offer versus serve as an option, meaning 3 out of the 5 components have to be served to each child, but they can choose not to have the other components. What they can take home is a grain, a fruit, or a vegetable. They cannot take home a protein or any of the milk. That's basically for health and sanitation reasons, that we don't want these things in a child's book bag spoiling and becoming a problem for the rest of the family. And then if you'll move to the next slide. So these are the records we get. We do have to know the items that have been served and that they're in compliance. We have to have the attendance and the meal counts. We process this, we file the claims, we distribute the funding, and we do the oversight. If there's an audit of the program, we'll participate in that also. So our administrative support, I believe, has helped the particular county we work with be able to pursue the program when previously they felt they didn't have the personnel and they didn't have the time to put into it. The parents have been excited about the program. We hear that attendance is up, that the children do choose to stay for the rest of the day. Let's move to the next slide now, please. So in that sense, what we're finding is that this has been a successful program. We started off with 1 school. We now have about 15 schools, and we're continuing to add all the time. So thank you. I'm sorry that something happened to my slideshow here and my availability to switch those for you. This is my contact information, and I'm certainly available to answer questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki. So our final speaker is Chef Monica Coulter. Monica is General Mills Food Services' dedicated K-12 culinary expert, and her role includes everything from identifying products and solutions that are a good fit for school feeding programs to developing recipes for kids' favorite menu items. She also regularly visits school kitchens to conduct training and to participate in working sessions, an experience that she says is both inspiring and eye-opening, since it gives her a first-hand glimpse into the world of the customers she serves. Her industry experience includes teaching at the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, and the School of Culinary Arts in Houston, Texas. Monica, over to you.
Thank you, LMA, and I do have to say it's awfully nice to be part of this group and get to present some ideas to you all. The kinds of things I'll be showing are both super snacks and supper ideas, and I do have a variety of different types of service in mind when I put these ideas together. So I've got some pre-packed containers, some grab-and-go bags, and also tray line service. And then I wanted to utilize a variety of different whole grains because I know that's a goal of yours within the program. So I have whole grain rich wheat, rice, and oats. And then I put in some ideas to change up the protein offerings, different kinds of meat alternatives to give you ideas to maybe present some ways to counteract menu fatigue. So for the different things I'm showing you, I've got pictures of the menu ideas, and they're my pictures, so they're not necessarily fancy or real professional, but they're real. And I have the meal pattern contribution chart on the bottom as well, so you can see not only what I'm offering, but how that's going to count. I didn't include milk in the meal pattern contribution because it is part of all the meals, and I just didn't take up space for that. Things to mention on this, I call this the Snack Attack Pack and consider it a super snack. There was a relatively recent change in regulations that allowed meat snacks to be served, as part of the reimbursable meal, and I wanted to make sure you all were aware of that. I have that information on the slide, and I've included Jack Links. They have a Chicken Bites. They're one of our vendor buddies, and I wanted to share that information with you. Then I have a mini bagel that's one of our products. It's not considered a grain-based dessert, so it is a nice addition to the meal. This entire bag could be assembled the night before and then held refrigerated for a cold service the next day. If you wanted to make the grab-and-go bag entirely shelf-stable, you could do that by including hummus or salsa instead of the carrots and the mini bagel, and then that would be a shelf-stable offering that you could have. The next slide that I have is, I call it a double cheese fiesta. This could be prepared and served in either a boat with an overwrap or in a clamshell. The broccoli and cheese crackers both aim to go nicely with the cup of cheese sauce, and I've included the cheese sauce as a little bit of a departure from the cheese sticks, just something that's kind of nice and different and still meeting that meat alternate. And then another thing that I have for you is a new yogurt product that we have out. It's an horchata-inspired yogurt, and it's one of our moves toward having more global flavors. And one of the nice things about this, other than it tastes really good, is that this is a product that's also offered in retail. And I think so often what we have in school food service, the kids aren't allowed or aren't able to, or their parents aren't able to get in retail settings as well. So I think anytime we've got something that is both available in your operation as well as available in grocery stores, it's really nice to have. One of the things I wanted to mention too about the yogurt is, remember that the sugar in yogurt for CACFP programs is limited to no more than 15 grams in a 4-ounce serving. This product has 4 grams, so it totally works. It fits within just fine. And then kind of a fun tip that I wanted to share with you from my friend Chef Robert, who does the school food service in an elementary school real nearby where I am at headquarters here. He shared with me that he cuts his oranges in sections but only 3/4 of the way. So this was a relatively large orange that was cut in half, and then the sections are only cut part way down. That makes it real easy to be able to serve it and have all the pieces together, but then the kiddos can still pull it apart and eat the sections easier. So it's much easier than giving them a whole piece of fruit, and then maybe a little less cumbersome than having the true sections. So then the next super snack is based on the Lunchables that kiddos just seem to love, those prepackaged pizza kits. Now this one has a prepackaged marinara cup. Makes that a really easy meal. I do know schools that do their own pizza sauces or their own marinara sauces. You know, more power to them if they can do that. Red Gold has nice products as well, and I wanted to include that. Instead of crackers for this, I have a whole grain rich panini roll, and I've got that cut in half. It wouldn't have to be. You could have the whole thing. But with this, it allows students some flexibility. They can stack or dunk or eat the components individually, so it allows them to customize and eat the meal the way they want to. Now, I didn't do the typical shredded cheese for this. I've got slices of pepper jack just for a change of pace. But if you wanted to do your shredded mozzarella or shredded cheddar, that works perfectly well too. And then I have turkey pepperoni in this. And what I should have done was use green grapes or a mixture of red and green grapes for more eye appeal. Didn't really realize until after I had this together and had this slide in the picture that the red grapes look way too much like the turkey pepperoni. And I like to have more color and more variety on a tray. So for this, I'm going to say, do as I say, not as I did. And then the next one, I just love this one, and I can say that because it was not my idea. I saw it posted on Dale Hayes' Tips for School Meals That Rock. That's a wonderful group exchange on Facebook. If you haven't joined that group, please do so. I promise you it will be beneficial. Now, I did make this mine a little bit by changing up some of the vegetables. instead of fruit. So I've got carrots in it instead of just apples. You can do different flavors of yogurt. I've got vanilla, strawberry, blueberry. You can change the kinds of fruits and vegetables. I added some dried cranberries. Gives a nice contrast with color and texture. May over-deliver a little bit on fruit, but I know very often you do that because the regs are for minimum calories and you can go over. I mixed the sunflower seeds with granola to create a power crunch. It's a nice way to add both sweetness and crunch. And do remember that seeds, while they meet a meat alternative, you don't want to do that for more than 50%, so adding that to the 4 ounces of the yogurt works out nicely. Then I have a super snack, which is pick-up checks, and students can eat this a variety of different ways. They can eat their cereal, they can eat their milk. Personally, I like to dip the vegetable stick into the nut butter or the soy butter and then dip that into the cereal. I'm motioning with my hands like you can see that somehow. But that gives a nice creamy, crunchy, good combination. So it's just a fun thing to do. This 2-ounce cup of cereal is the 2-ounce equivalent grain. It meets the 6 grams of sugar per 1-ounce serving. Even though this is 2 servings and it has 12 ounces of grain or sugar, it still works together nicely for that. I also have a blenderless smoothie included. That is your yogurt for the meat alternate. It has applesauce and apple juice. I put a little bit of pumpkin spice in it to give it a seasonal feel. And for more smoothie ideas, you can go to the General Mills food service website, and there's lots of blenderless smoothie recipe ideas. And then for my warm supper tray line service, I was inspired by students loving to have breakfast all day. A lot of QSR restaurants are also offering breakfast all day. This is a warm oatmeal-based finger food. It's a baked oatmeal, and I had lots of operators asking me for this recipe, and so I came up with one and was just really pleased with it. Added berries to the tray for more color, and then you could also add sweet potatoes if you wanted a little bit different starchy vegetable and for added color as well. And then I have the actual recipe for the baked oatmeal on this slide. And to do this, I've got a bag of Parfait Pro Vanilla, 32 ounces of oats. I've got 8 cups of fruit and then included some brown sugar and eggs. You just mix all of that together and then spread it in a sheet pan. Bake it at 350 for about 30 minutes. And then you can cut it into 4 by 6 for about 32 pieces. You have the option of serving 2 pieces each for 2-ounce equivalent grain, and then also the, my timer's going off on me, and then also the meat alternate and the fruit. But if you want to serve it with different amount of grains, you can also do that just by changing the way that you're cutting things up. So I hope these ideas will help you out with your supper program, even some of your breakfast or lunch offerings as well. And with that, I'm going to close and turn it back over to my friend Ella May. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Monica, and thank you to all our speakers for the great content you shared so far. Now, before we move into the Q&A portion of the webinar, I want to quickly highlight our convenience and food service website. So generalmillscf.com website, where you can find additional recipes and resources. So do check it out after the webinar. Okay, so now let's begin our Q&A section. We've already received some really great questions, and so thank you to everyone who is participating and engaging. As a reminder, for those of you who would still like to submit a question, please use the chat feature located in the left bottom corner of your screen. Okay, so the first question, I believe maybe the first 2 questions are for Caroline. And so the first one is, how is supper in the classroom served if it has to be done after the bell?
Yes, that's a great question. I think Vicki did go on to mention that it is after the school bell rings but before dismissal. But to go into a little bit more detail on that, we find that the best way is often if a school has extra instructional minutes in the day, usually state set minimum minutes that students have to be in school with instructional time. And so if a school is over that minimum, they can cut back their school day and officially ring the bell a little bit earlier. And that just minimizes disruptions in terms of the time that teachers and students are used to being in their classrooms before everyone is dismissed. But even if you don't want to take that route or don't have that flexibility, as long as you can have the teachers stay in their rooms and their contracts don't free them the minute the bell rings, then you could still have kids stay in the classrooms and eat the meal after the bell rings, but before they get formally, dismissed. Other schools do say, hey, parents, you can still come pick up your kid, at this, formal bell time, but we're going to have a meal for them, and you can also pick them up, 15, 20 minutes later when everyone, leaves. So there are some different options for how to make that work. If you have further questions about how to make it work in your situation, I'm more than happy to talk with you. But again, as Vicki said, in general, it's after the formal bell time, but before you dismiss the kids.
So any other speaker want to add some comments to that? Okay. Well, thank you, Caroline, for that answer. Okay, so moving on to our next question, I think again directed at Caroline. If we wanted to offer meals during the holidays, are we still required to have an enrichment program?
Yes, that's another great question, and the answer is yes. For CACFP at-risk after-school meals, there always has to be some kind of enrichment activity. Now, that does not mean that you have to have some kind of full-day camp or a half-day program. It can be as easy as having, a cart from the library with books, having, some toys and different games for indoor physical activities. You could do a nutrition education lesson. So it can be really simple. It can be kind of as a kid wants to do the activity. It could be very short, but there does have to be something with an adult supervising that activity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Caroline. So our next question is really around this idea of super snacks. So what is a super snack? And then a follow-up question to that is why really brand a meal as a super snack when you can call it supper? And so if any of our panelists want to pick that up, that would be great.
Do you mind if I take that one, Ilame? This is Betty Crocker.
Sure, go right ahead.
So I don't know if any of the other speakers want to add to this, but I can chime in from our seat over here in California, just kind of following our culture over here. We have no frickin' clue what a supper is out here on the West Coast. I'm sure my East Coast friends are having fun with me right now. But what I found to be super friendly and super communicative, because I did not want to call it a snack, because the snack already had a brand inside of my district as being a very small portion of a meal. And so I wanted to convey cleanly and clearly that this was a super snack, which was essentially an enhanced snack, and immediately conveyed and allowed us to brand this as a substantial opportunity for the after-school, any of the after-school programs.
Okay, thank you, Betty. Anybody else want to chime in?
This is Carolyn, and I'll just add that, when, we all talk about super snack, what we mean is a meal that meets the requirements for a CACFP at-risk supper, but doesn't feel like a, heavy meat and potatoes full meal or a dinner. So it's, we just view it as a way of branding that, meal that meets the formal regulatory requirements in a way that more accurately reflects the foods included. Because when people hear supper, if they even know what it means, they probably do think of that heavy, meal that grandma made at 3 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon or something like that, and not, a yogurt parfait.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for that answer. The next question is actually for Betty. Can you share what you are serving on your cold menu?
Yes, Ilame, we have a website, and you can view my entire menu for all of my programs. The website is rusdnutrition.org. Essentially what we do is we put together all of the components of the CACFP supper pattern. And then just as Chef Monica presented, my team is sitting here with me, and we're sitting here taking pictures of all great ideas. But just to kind of give you a understanding of what we're doing right now, is we run a single cycle, so that's a 1-week cycle. We repeat it every week of the month, and then we change it up about every 2 to 3 months. Right now I have pretzels with cheese, I have garbanzos, I have fresh carrots, I have a fruit burst strawberry, and then I mix it up the next day with cereal and yogurt and honey seeds, celery, craisins. And then the next day I'm looking at some mini corn muffins with a turkey stick. Turkey stick is one of my kiddos' favorites. String cheese, carrots, and then we also have the last little bit of our fresh plums. And then on Thursday I'm looking again at the mini apple muffin. I have some cereal with Trix, the seeds, broccoli, apples, and then Friday we end it with goldfish, pretzels, cheese sticks, trail mix, cranberries, and carrots. And it's really important when you're doing the menu planning that Friday menu, that those foods are shelf stable enough or are stable enough that they would carry over to the next opportunity for service. I hope that answered the question, whoever was asking that, but you can catch that right now on my website.
Okay, thank you so much, Betty. So the next question is just more general, so anyone feel free to pick it up. When taking attendance, does the student ID need to be listed on the roster, or can it just be a sign-in sheet with names written down?
Well, I'll be glad to answer that. That's Vicki. No, you do not. And it's not the school attendance necessarily. It's the attendance in the classroom at the time of the meal service.
Ilame, this is Betty Crocker again. Can I chime in on this one?
Absolutely.
So I want to also echo what Monica said. Yes, those are the regulations. One of the things that we've done here in Redland to accommodate all of our outlier programs and the rich diversity that we've enjoyed with this is we have come up with an online reporting system that supports our production, and an online reporting tool that supports exactly what Monica shared, is that we have the rosters sent to us by all of the coordinators, and then they simply just check which kiddo had the meal, and they give those to us weekly. The other thing that we do when we have any special enrichment events, as I showed on the outlier program, we have the sign-in sheets, which is also another CACFP requirement. So when you're not moving through your traditional roster program and it's I'll call it a special event, that's how we manage all of those. But we try to keep everything as online as possible so it's accessible for everybody.
Okay, thank you so much, Betty. So another question here is the reimbursement the same for supper and for super snack?
This is
Yes,
Carolyn.
yes.
I can take that. Yes. It is an easy answer. It meets all the requirements for a CACFP at-risk supper, so you get the same reimbursement for it.
Okay. Thank you. All right, another question for Betty. Can you share your online reporting tool?
Yeah, anybody who is interested in that, feel free to give me a call. And then I also have it on the website, which is the rusdnutrition.org. And my assistant director, Miss Alyssa, right now is showing me on my home webpage, rusdnutrition.org. Just go to the top gray bar. You'll see Nutrition and Fitness. And underneath that, you'll see the after-school program coordinators. Click on that, and that will immediately give you that online access that all of my after-school providers enjoy. Remember, I have a very diverse area that I service, so I'm working with Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, Think Together. We just brought another one online as well, plus the city of Redlands and Smiley Library. So this is our saving grace, if you will. I hope that answered the question of our member.
Okay, thank you, Betty. So this one is for Chef Monica. Can you share thoughts on how we might think about different packaging options, while keeping in mind sustainability? So, thinking paper versus plastic or styrofoam.
Yes, it so depends upon what is available to the different districts, what they have access to, and even, what different regulations are. I try to use a variety of what I see that is out there, but I know a lot of operators are a lot more conscious of not using things that are just thrown away and not easily recycled, and I certainly commend them on that. But that's something that I think that they maybe need to check with their vendors in the area, and even check within their operators within their area and see what's available to them there. With not being part of the packaging manufacturing world, I don't have a lot of answers. I just tend to get things that I see other operators using.
Well, thank you so much, Chef Monica. So this question is open to any or all of the panelists. This is an additional question here. So what is one piece of advice you would give to anyone online who does not have a after-school meal program?
This is Betty Crocker. My 2 cents, if you're just starting up, is to reach out to your neighboring districts, which is exactly what I did. I took my team on a field trip over to Riverside Unified School District to see what Rodney Taylor and his team had done over there, and it really launched us into understanding, building on what their success is and bring it back over here to Redlands to make it our own. So the neighboring districts are a big deal in my mind. The other thing, too, is just reaching out to, it seems like there's 3 of us directors on here, maybe reaching out to any of the 3 of us. And the biggest thing that I would encourage you to do is to start small and grow strong. When I inherited this and I was moving through our very first year of putting this all together, we did not launch everything all at once. We did it in waves, and I met with my team, and we did it in keeping with what our team could manage with the enhanced deliveries, with the enhanced production. So it was a big wrap-up period.
Any other takers?
This is Carolyn. I'll just say very similar to what Betty said, reach out and talk to other people, because, you can definitely learn from what other people are doing and get a lot of different ideas about how to apply all of that to your district and your schools. It's never going to look exactly the same. Every school, even within a district, is unique and may need a little bit of a different schedule or a different model to work for them. But I think by talking with a lot of different people, you'll get a better sense for what all those options are, so you can kind of mix and match to figure out what's going to work best for you.
Okay, another question here. Does the supper or super snack program affect the weekly nutrition amount? And I'm assuming that this weekly nutrition amount is referring to school meal program.
This is Betty Crocker. You want me to take that one?
Sure.
So the CACFP program is a completely different program than the NSLP. And I'm inspired to share that that was one of our strategies, because the NSLP reimbursements are enhanced. The biggest enhancement with the NSLP is during the school day, where that reimbursement does not carry through after school. So we had a sharp drop-off only during the school day with NSLP, and then after school we do 100% CACFP. And there are two different regulatory buckets, if you will, and one of them does not impact the other one. So what my nutrition requirements of CACFP do not spill into NSLP and vice versa. They're two distinct buckets that we draw from.
Thank you so much, Betty.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so thank you all for the great questions and your engagement and your time today. We will go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. As mentioned earlier, you will be asked to fill out a short survey at the conclusion of this program, and we'll be receiving an email shortly that will include links to the slides presented today and the continuing education certificate. We invite you to follow the Bell Institute and General Mills Food Service on social media. You can also explore these websites, which offer nutrition education resources, videos, recipe inspiration, and previously recorded continuing education webinars. Lastly, be sure to watch your inbox for future webinars and free continuing education opportunities from us. Now, this concludes our program. You may now disconnect. Thank you.